Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda and I am here with my April wrap-up. If you've seen my channel before, I have a format that I use for my wrap-ups. It covers pretty much everything I like to report back from my reading for the month. And so I'm just gonna follow that through. I start with some stats and then I'll finish with, well, I'll start with stats and then I'll go through the books I read and then I'll do some more little recaps. So first of all, I finished 13 books this month, which is pretty much right where I want to be. That's great. I only DNF'd one. This is my first DNF of the year, and that was The Blue Beautiful World by Karen Lord, and I DNF'd it at 48%. It's science fiction. Science fiction is a genre that's a little bit harder for me, and I just kind of felt like it was a book that was a little out of my reach. There comes a point in the book where you kind of shift the cast of characters a bit, and I realized I hadn't connected to the first cast, and now they're introducing new people, so it was a good time to bail. My average rating for the month was 3.9, so that's just below an A. That's wonderful. And as for formats, I read 7 print books, 3 ebooks, 2 audiobooks, and then 1 book that I did a combination of reading and audio. And now I'm going to go through the genres. So I do not consider classics to be a genre, but I do like to note how many classics I read a month. And for my purposes, a classic is a book that is at least 50 years old and is still in print. And I read 4 of those this month, so that's really good. And I also read 1 book of poetry, which I put under a different genre. So I just pulled out the format as poetry, but it's going to show up again in the genres. As for genres, I read 1 that was fantasy. It wasn't high fantasy, it was lighter fantasy, but still fantasy in my book. 1 historical fiction, 3 mystery, 1 thriller, 1 what I call a time capsule book, and I'll say which one that is when I get to the individual books. 1 book that was nonfiction history, 4 memoirs or biographies, which makes sense, and I will get to that, and 1 tragedy, which is a play by Shakespeare. Now, here we go through all 13 books that I read. The first one, and I start by my lowest grade to my highest grade. I actually rate my books by letter grade, and then that converts to a star. To me, letter grades make more sense than stars. So I gave 1 book a C, and that was Such a Quiet Place by Miranda. It's a thriller that I listened to. It was both predictable and ridiculous. And it kept me entertained as far as audio, but it's definitely not a book that I would recommend. And then we jump all the way up to B, so that's great. I only had 1 book that I would say was not successful. And I only have 1 book that's a B, and that is The Mysterious Mr. Quin by Agatha Christie. This is a short story collection, and generally I give Agatha Christie short story collections A's, just in general. I had some trouble with this one. 2 big problems. The first is the mysteries in this book didn't seem distinct from each other. There wasn't a lot of variety in the type of mystery. Second of all, I don't know what Mr. Quin is. Is he a real person? Sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't. I don't know, and I want to know, but I don't think Agatha Christie knew either. I believe these stories were written pretty early in her career, so I'll chalk a lot of that up to her just being a new writer. But I didn't particularly like the fact that sometimes Mr. Quin was a flesh and blood person and sometimes he was not. That made no sense to me. Now we go to B+. I had 2 books that I gave a B+ to. And this first one might get changed up or down. And it's Coriolanus. It got a grade now because I had to give a grade for the end of the month, but I'm still thinking about this one. I will be seeing a production of it this weekend. As far as plot goes, this was actually a pretty easy play to follow. By the way, this was my tandem read. I listened to it on audio while I read it. The plot was actually pretty easy to follow. But I feel like it's one of his plays that has a lot of layers. And so this one really needs a deeper study than some of the plays I've read so far in my Shakespeare project. So the B+ is sort of a placeholder grade. It may go up. And the other book I gave a B+ to was Appointment with Death by Agatha Christie. Most of this book was an A, but then there was an epilogue in the end that I hated, and I refused to give it an A. So I gave it a B+. But if you take the epilogue out, it's a pretty good mystery. Just skip the epilogue. It's stupid. It is. It's not at all necessary for the story, and it kind of cheapened the whole book. I read 6 books this month that I gave an A to, so that's fantastic. The first one was an audiobook that I listened to with my family as we made our mad drive from Tucson, Arizona to Portland Airport to pick up our car. And that is The Wager by David Grann. This book's gotten a lot of press and coverage and people talking about it, so I don't think I need to say too much about it other than it was I thought a really fun adventure nonfiction tale. The next book I read was Ducks, 2 Years in the Oil Sands by Kate Beaton. This is a graphic memoir, and I read this for my library book group. However, because our vacation got so messed up, there's a video about it, I didn't get back in time to read it and go to the book club. So I ended up just skipping my book club because I wanted to have the chance to enjoy this book, and I did. I thought it was a really good graphic memoir. The next book I gave an A to was the group read for People April, I Am by 17 Brushes with Death by Maggie O'Farrell. Some people call this a memoir. I would say it's a book of essays, but potato. I think in here I actually counted it as a memoir. We'll see. Anyway, doesn't matter. This is about 17 times that Maggie O'Farrell, who's an author, she wrote Hamnet, The Marriage Portrait. Those are her 2 most recent novels. 17 times that she came up face to face with death. Some of them are pretty harrowing, and I don't understand how this woman's still alive, but it was a great read. My only complaint about it is I felt that the way it was organized, which is non-chronological, and I'm fine with it being not chronological, but there were some points in it where I would have reorganized the essays a little bit to give some of the ones that maybe aren't as harrowing a little bit more oomph. Then I have The Best American Mystery and Suspense by Lisa Unger. This is a short story anthology of mystery and suspense stories. I really enjoyed it. There's a nice group of authors in here, many of whom I previously had read, like S.A. Cosby and Jess Welter and Silvia Moreno Garcia. It was really fun. I read this over a long period of time. I believe I started this on January 2nd, and I just finished it this week. It was part of my rotation of short story novels. Then I had a book recommended to me by my oldest brother. It's called The Lost Bookshop. This was sort of a cozy fantasy novel about a bookshop and people that find it. I can't get too into it. It had 2 different timelines, which worked in this book. It had a lot of literary references. There's a subplot about Emily Bronte. I really enjoyed it. It sucked me in, but I also recognize if I think too hard about it, I might be able to push some holes in it. So I'm not going to think that hard about it. One thing that leave me wondering about it is that my oldest brother recommended it to me, and there's a really awful older brother in this book. So what was he trying to say? And the last book I gave an A to was a poetry collection, because I did want to make sure I got one for Poetry Month, and that's Cannibal by Safiya Sinclair. I read this kind of right after I read her memoir, which will be coming up. And I think they pair really well together because she references these poems in that book, and you have more information about her as you read these poems. I thought they were pretty good. I thought they were good. I don't feel like I'm an expert on poetry, so I gave it an A because that's great. But I don't feel like I don't feel that qualified to talk too much about it. I used to read more poetry than I do. So I'm trying to rectify that. Now, I gave one book an A+, and that was As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zoulfa Katouh. I read this with my marginalized authors book group. This is a YA novel, although I'm not a big reader of YA, but I still really enjoyed this one. And it's set during the Syrian Revolution. I thought it was incredibly captivating, horribly hard to read at times, and it really gave us a really good discussion of this book. It paired really well with the book that we read in December, which was What Strange Paradise by Omar El-Akkad. I would recommend pairing those 2 books together, but then not reading them right back to back, because that's a lot. But yeah, definitely that was a great book club. That was a great book club book, and it was a really powerful reading experience. Now this month I actually had 2 5-star books. I am very stingy with my 5 stars. Last year I only gave 5 books 5 stars. This year, as we come to the end of April, I've given 4 books 5 stars. So I have 2. And the first one is How to Say Babylon by Safiya Sinclair, which was her memoir. I love this book. I learned a lot. Safiya Sinclair was raised in a Rastafarian family, and I thought Rastafarianism was dreadlocks, reggae music, and pot smoking. I didn't know it was actually religion, so I learned about that. She had a really, hard childhood, and she related it so well, and she showed so much vulnerability about it. But the children in her family, who were raised in pretty severe poverty, they all have become very accomplished in their fields, and it's just a testament to the human spirit. The language is lovely, which is not surprising because Safiya Sinclair is a poet. But yeah, that book was amazing. I've had a lot of people say that the audio is really great. So if I were to do a reread, I'd do the audio. However, Heidi at My Reading Life said she had a little trouble with the audio. So I think it's, your mileage may vary, because I do think that there's maybe some speech patterns that might not sit well with some people, just sort of the Jamaican speech patterns. So if you want to do the audio, give it a try. But if the audio doesn't work for you, pick up the print, because it is really worth it. And the other book that I gave 5 stars to was a buddy read, and that was Death Comes for the Archbishop by Willa Cather. This is only the second Willa Cather book I've read. I read My Antonia in high school. And I was drawn to this book, so I picked it up kind of at a whim at my library bookstore. They have a little Friends of the Library bookstore, because the cover reminded me of where my father lives and where we frequently visit in Arizona. The book is actually set in New Mexico, right next to each other. But the area where my father's lives, the mission near him is name dropped in it. I just found this just a gorgeous book about a really wonderful archbishop who kind of goes out and, he takes a chance to go out to the new Southwest. I mean, it's only newly part of the United States when he goes out there with another, he's a French priest, and he has another friend who's a French priest, and they come out. And it's just about how he develops that up, and the people he meets, and how he encounters their culture. And it's just a wonderful book. So lovely. Wonderful book. If you have never read Willa Cather, I can't necessarily say start with this one, but I will definitely say this is not one you should say not start with, because it is fantastic. I love this book. So for read-alongs and events in April, I did Poetry Month, which was Cannibal. Cannibal by Safiya Sinclair. And I also did a read-along with Miranda at Books and Bocadillos with Death Comes for the Archbishop. And then the big event this month was People April, which I leaned right into because I read 4 books that covered that. Let me see if I can reach over and get them all here. I read the group read, which was I Am. I did Ducks, 2 Years in the Oil Sands by Kate Beaton. How to Say Babylon by Safiya Sinclair. And then because these poems were so autobiographical, I included this as part of People April as well. People April is not just memoirs and biographies. And I think poetry is a very interesting way someone can tell their own story. So I included this as well. Now let's go to the scary part, the yearly stats. So my reading goal for the year is 165 books, and I'm currently at the end of April, I've read 55 books, which puts me 1 book ahead of schedule, according to the little Goodreads counter. So yay me. That's one of the few yays you're gonna get. Now, my owned TBR count is at 850. And it's up 9 from last month and up 21 overall. This includes me basically hauling 16 ebooks. It's still up. Now here's a really scary part, is my print count is at 273, which is up 23 from last month. You may have already seen my flawed, I don't know what's up with the audio on that one. I'm still trying to figure it out. So if you watch it and I don't know, the tech gremlins were being difficult. I can't figure out what's going on. But if you watch my April book haul, 31 books. But hey, I'm only up 23, so. But that's up 23 from last month and up 41 overall. So my goal of having 828 books or less at December 23 is looking farther and farther away. I either need to buckle down or just say screw it. I don't know. Now, the good news is my ebook count is at 505, which is down 17 from last month. That includes the haul that I did, and down 21 overall. And if you were to break it down between Kindle and Kobo, on Kindle, I'm at 137 unread owned books, which is down 16, which are the NetGalleys that I unhauled, but down 19 overall. And my Kobo is down 1 from last month, which is down 2 overall. So it's not all bad. So that was my April. Let me know how your April goes. I'm sorry for all the jumping, but allergies are really bad right now. I'm sure I'm not the only one in that position. But anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. Like, subscribe. Feel free to join my Discord. We're talking about books and all sorts of fun stuff there. And I will see you next time. Bye.